Welcome to the AV Tech Playbook, your go-to resource for navigating the world of AV and IT infrastructure. Whether you're supporting a corporate office, worship center, healthcare facility, or even a pro sports venue, we're here to break down the systems behind seamless operations. From networked AV to asset management and system integration, we bring you expert insights and practical takeaways to help you stay ahead of the curve. Welcome to AV Tech Playbook, where we explore how AV and IT technology shape infrastructure of learning, entertainment, and experience. Today's guest is Philip ONeal, a 2024 Texas High School Athletic Director of the Year, Hall of Honor inductee, and former president of the Texas High School Athletic Directors Association. With over 30 years of experience managing large school districts and athletic programs, Philip brings unmatched insight into how high school athletic facilities are built, managed, and supported. We're an athletic director for over 30 years, managing, athletics at multiple districts. Give me an idea of what the typical structure is for an independent school district in terms of the people and their typical roles.
And when you say that, are you talking about like starting with the school board or the superintendent and on down? And then
whoever would be involved
in the
in
athletic arena.
Yeah, it's probably good just to touch upon from the school board down, but really we're the decision-making process. When we're going to have vendors and integrators and other high school districts looking at this. And so it's giving people some color as to how the structure typically works. I've worked in sports venue technology for 25 years, and it seems like that the professional sports space and the college sports space is pretty well understood by most of the integrators and vendors and consultants. But the high school space and the independent school district space is kind of a black box. So a lot of people aren't as familiar with how the organization is structured. So it would be great to kind of understand what that structure looks like from the top down.
The first thing I'm going to say is different a lot of times from district to district. It may be different in a smaller classification school, a school that has, one high school, maybe, one middle school, one elementary school, as opposed to one high school town that maybe has two middle schools and, 7 or 8 elementary schools. It's just different from district to district. And then if you get into multi-school districts, it's even different there than it might be, in a one high school place. So in a smaller town, a lot of times the superintendent or the number 2, the deputy superintendent or the chief financial officer would be really involved in the decision-making process in regards to, procurement. They're going to be highly involved in, any decision that's made. So if you're an athletic director and you want let's just say you want a new scoreboard and a new LED scoreboard, you're going to work through your chief financial officer and maybe even your superintendent to try to get that done, or whoever your immediate boss is. At a larger district or in a district that has multi-high schools, a lot of times your superintendent's not going to be really heavily involved in that at all. They're going to be the one that just stamps it at the end. So if you're an athletic director, you may have to work through your boss, who might then work through the chief financial officer, who you may also be working through the operations people, the people that are, in charge of maintenance and operations for your district. So again, it just depends on the district. It may depend on the size of the district. Again, a bigger two bigger districts, let's just say 2 districts that have 5 high schools each, and then another 6 or 7 middle schools, etc. They may function very differently. Whoever has the final say could be the maintenance operation. It could be the chief financial officer. It could be the deputy superintendent. It just varies from district to district.
That's, I think, why it's so complicated, and people wonder because it's not a one, kind of what's the phrase? It's not the same for every district. It's unique based on the size and the decision-making process is unique as well. So unlike a college athletics project where you've got a CFO and an AD and some assistant or associate ADs, you have a variety of people that could be involved in the procurement process for a high school district. And so when a vendor is looking to support a high school district, some vendors have been around forever supporting the high school districts, and a lot of them, vendors would love to come in and to be a technology partner, whether it's an integrator or an LED vendor, a broadcast provider. What's the best way for a new vendor to develop a relationship with a district? Do you start at the top with the athletic director and then kind of be guided from there? Or is there a better approach for someone to start to learn more about how they can support your district?
So that's a great question. So in my opinion, and having done it, as long as I did in multiple places, I've been in that one high school town, I've been in a 5 high school town, and I've had or a 5 high school district, and then I've been in a district that had 11 high schools. The best way is to work through that athletic director and then find out who the decision maker is in that district. In that
Right.
district, it may be the deputy superintendent, or it may be the chief financial officer. It may be the operations, the associate superintendent or deputy superintendent or assistant superintendent for operations. Just use that connection that you have to find out who the players are, and then move from there to try to navigate the system to get yourself in a position to start building the relationship with the right people, because it does vary from
Yeah.
district to district. So I'm seeing it from another side now. Now I'm on the other side. I'm not an athletic director any longer, but now I'm on the other side trying to, working for different vendors who are, either whether it be a scoreboard vendor or a turf vendor or whoever it may be. Now I'm seeing it from the other side, and I'm working through those connections that I have with the athletic directors then to find out who the players are, who the decision makers are in their district, so that I can then begin to try to build a relationship with them.
Yeah, if that's the path that you're choosing, I think that's probably the best path for others to go. And it sounds like there's enough variability that you just need to know kind of what the structure of that specific district. It's going to be very different for a small district with a single high school versus some that have a dozen or more, and that decision-making process will vary. I've also heard and sometimes experienced that coaches have got a lot more influence or input on some high school districts than I would typically see at the college level. Would you say that's true, or is that common across most districts, or is that normally a district by district basis?
Again, I think that's a district by district basis. What you're going to find out is, if you're out there trying to build those relationships and you're working through the athletic director, you're going to find out in some instances that the athletic director has a large amount of influence. And you're going to find out in other instances where the athletic director makes none of those decisions, which is very different. And so I've been in districts where I've had more influence in some situations than I did others. And a lot of that had to do with my predecessor. If my predecessor was highly involved, then when I, became that person, when I sat in their seat, then at that point, then I was able to be highly involved. If I went to a district where the athletic director wasn't overly involved, they weren't accustomed to involving the athletic director. And so I had to try to do my best to insert myself to be a part of those decisions and to build those relationships. And so I had to kind of flip the script. But that took time because, again, they weren't accustomed to being involved in that, and to piggyback on, the previous kind of question, if you're going to a small district, what I'm learning in my new capacity, because I've never been in a really, really small district. When I say a small district, like a 1A school that maybe has, 800 students, 500 students, K through 12. What I've learned in those scenarios is that the superintendent is highly involved. And so I'm accustomed to not really, in the roles that I've had at bigger districts, I'm accustomed to the superintendent really not being involved in those kind of things at all until the end when it comes time to, either present the decision that's made to the school board or to sign off on it or whatever. But I'm learning that in smaller districts, superintendents are they're integrated into who you need to be selling to. So that's
Interesting.
something that's really different that I've learned.
Good input. So tell me a little bit about ByBoards, because that's something that's also gets is unique to the school district or the public money side of things versus dealing with a large college or a professional venue.
So my knowledge about that is on the surface. It's really not.
Yeah.
I don't know that I could tell you a lot of detail about it, but here's what I do know about it. So buying co-ops are an opportunity for school districts to kind of usurp or go around having to get three quotes and comparing the quotes and doing all those kind of things. If you utilize a buying co-op, then you can kind of forego that process. It's a method for you to forego that process. ByBoard has basically already done all of the things that they need to do to make a vendor qualify to be a part of their buying co-op. And as a result, if you buy it direct through them, and there is generally you get a rebate when you go
Mm-hmm.
through ByBoard. There's a form of a rebate, and you get a lower. Generally speaking, you get a little bit of a lower price because there's a ByBoard price or a co-op price, and so you don't have to go through that whole process. It allows you to be more expeditious in doing your purchasing. You don't have to go through the process of getting quotes and doing all those things and checking all the boxes. You use a co-op, you can expedite the process, if that makes sense.
It does. It sounds like they have vetted the vendors, and then they make a more streamlined process. If you already know certain vendors that you want to deal with, if they're a part of that buying co-op, it can streamline the process because they've already been through a certain vetting period or process, and you don't have the same limitations in terms of the number of getting three RFPs and matching everything through and understood. What
Exactly.
would you say over your decades of experience? What would you say are some of the biggest challenges that you dealt with at the top of an organization regarding technology? What things have become kind of thorns in your side when it comes to either purchasing or maintaining the technology that you have as part of the athletics program?
So from a purchasing perspective, the biggest pain point is you have to be able to sell, and I'm speaking from an athletic director's perspective or an administrator's perspective. You have to be able to sell that what you want is a priority for the district. A lot of times those kind of things are not prioritized, and other things are. And so what you have to do is really show that there's a need, and then once you are able to sell that there's a need, then you have to get the people that are the decision makers to prioritize that. Now
And
again,
are you selling the school board? Is that what that is? And this is a process. Who would it be that you're selling
no,
on
it's
that?
really more. It's really more. The school board really is. That's not really their function.
Okay.
Their function would be to sign off on it at the end, and usually they just basically rubber stamp those kind of things, and
Right.
unless it's something really big.
Okay.
But you're really selling it to the administration. You're selling it to the superintendent and the CFO and those people, whoever the decision makers are. Is you're selling
Okay.
it to them, and you're letting them know that there's a need, and a lot of times you're going to have to prove that there's a need, and then you have to do everything in your power to make it a priority to get it replaced. Those are the things that are really the biggest pain points from that lens, in trying to get equipment or upgrades or whatever it may be. Now, a lot of times school districts go out for bonds. So if they go out for a bond, again, A lot of times there's capacity in how much bond money they can go out for, and so now you've got to sell that bond committee, or however it's structured in that district, the administration. You've got to sell them that what it is you need is a priority. Let's say you need a new $1 million LED board. You've got to sell to those people that LED board is a priority and something that's more important than other things in the district. You've got to show that there's the need, and then you've got to do everything in your power to make it a priority.
Do the vendors ever help you in that process? Do they provide drawings or feedback, or is this something really just coming from you yourself?
Again, depending on what it is, they definitely provide you information. And one of the things they'll do a lot of times, and again, I'm seeing this from the other side now, is I do a lot of providing budgets for people. So if they're going out for a bond, I'm letting them know, hey, you want this particular item, and here's how much it's going to cost you in the end to get that item. And so then they would take that and sell, let's say it's $1 million LED scoreboard. Now the vendor has said, if that's the board you want right now, that's going to cost you $1 million. Now you're going and you're selling to that bond committee or the people that are the decision makers to determine what goes on the bond to provide to the public. You're selling to them what it is. But that would be the vendor's role, would be to give them budgets, drawings, those kind of things. Let them know what the latest and greatest is. Give them the talking points on the equipment, so they can show, they can use those details about the equipment to be able to sell it.
How is the keeping up with the Joneses and understanding what other districts are doing, and how does that process work in terms of, were you actively sharing information and learning from others, whether at conferences or just through direct relationships that you had, in order to try to, whether it's one up another district or even to compete, to something that someone's done that's been really well received?
So that is definitely a thing. Keeping up with the Joneses is definitely a thing. And, again, it depends on who it might be. So, if you'll take in Texas, you'll take a South Lake Carroll. And let's say a South Lake Carroll has done something to adopt a new technology that is going to enhance their ability to scout or whatever it may be. And they're having success with that, or they're having luck with that, then people are going to want that. When people find out that's what they're doing, they're going to want it. There are other districts that people look to, like the Friscos or the McKinneys or the Richardsons, or the list goes on. I could name a multitude of districts in Texas. So when people find out what it is they're doing, and those districts that kind of people look to that have a quality athletic department, then people are going to want to people are going to want to do the things they're doing.
Makes sense. Once technology is already in play, how is that the technology life cycles managed? Is there a process? Is it, obviously it probably varies from district to district. How robust is that? And how actively involved would you find yourself as the athletic director versus some technical staff downstream on that?
So that's another great question. To your point, it does vary from district to district. But having said that, a lot of times, one of the things that was really frustrating in my role as an athletic director is we never had a budget to replace equipment that was, we didn't have a robust budget to replace equipment that was outdated, or, that was not current, and or that was old and not current. And so you're really just kind of scrambling to try to figure out maybe how you can manage your budget to do some things from, this year to maybe to replace, let's take an end zone camera, for example. You got an end zone camera that at one school and they need a new one, but you don't have a budget for that. And so you're trying to figure out how you can manipulate your budget to be able to come up with some money to help them with that. I think about um, uh, football headsets, sideline headsets, where they communicate from the press box to the sideline. Those things get old and outdated very quick, and they're also very expensive. And so you're trying to figure out how to manipulate your budget to do that. But generally speaking, I've never been any place where you had a lot of discretionary dollars to be able to do those kind of things. You had some, but you didn't have near enough for the needs that you had. So again, it's really just kind of managed from place to place. I'm certain there are some school districts that have some discretionary dollars designed for those kind of things. I just never have been at that place, and so it's as an athletic director, you're trying to figure it out. Sometimes you're using your booster club to help you do some of those kind of things. So
Understood.
yeah, so that's kind of really that again, that's looking at it through the lens of the athletic director.
Right. But so if you had robust asset management, if you had something that would give you budgetary guidance and allow you to see what other districts are doing and to be able to provide insight as to when a warranty is going to run up or a typical replacement time frame should be for a product, that's something that would be highly useful, but it's not really robustly implemented, is what I'm hearing across the board.
Yeah, it would be highly useful, but it is not robustly implemented across the board. No.
Understood. Now, is there ever a case where you would use rental equipment, or would you all be open typically to use technology as trying to make the best bang for your buck? I'm curious as to whether equipment shared, whether there's rentals, whether sometimes smaller districts are looking to buy something or to acquire something from a larger district that's not using it. Is there any of that in play?
There is, but I would say that's minimal.
Okay.
Generally speaking, that's not something that's done, as much as it is as just buying equipment.
Okay, got it. So what would you say are the biggest lessons you've learned regarding your technology in your time as an athletic director? Are there any major lessons you said, man, I wish if I had known this back when I started, 30 years ago, this would have been really helpful, and it's just something you kind of learned through, experience?
That's a really good question and not something I've spent a whole lot of time thinking about. But some of the things that come to mind initially, that just pop into my head as you bring that up would be, first of all, technology changes really fast.
Right.
And I read something one time that said technology doubles about every year and a half nowadays. And so, if technology changes that quick, you have to be a little judicious and maybe dig into things a little deeper to find out those kind of things that are going to help you maybe more long term than others. So I would say make sure that you're looking at those things that are going to help you more long term than others. I'm trying to think of some technology that we've used before. Well, you take and I know huddle is really a little bit of a cuss word these days just because they've kind of cornered the market. But take huddle, for example. You started out, downloading your videos or your game film, and now
Right.
you're at a place to where it literally, analyzes it for you. So the days of you sending coaches to scout games, you don't do that anywhere near as much. When I started, nearly 40 years ago, every Friday night I was at a football game and we were using mimeograph paper to draw plays and to make copies so that we could hand those out to the kids to show them what the other team was doing. And nowadays, you're texting kids, plays from the video that's been downloaded to their phone so that they can look at it, at home at night. So it's come that far. But again, I would say that make sure that you're, digging deep into, the longevity of something that you can use, because you don't have those kind of discretionary dollars to be able to just spend on anything.
Sure.
And that would probably be my number one thing, would just be, make sure you're being judicious as you vet different platforms and different technologies to make sure that they're going to be something that you're going to be able to use long term.
Got it. Would you say that the budgets have grown significantly over? Do they keep up with inflation? Would you find them to be increasingly tighter? As technology has become more affordable, like 20 years ago, an LED display wouldn't have been affordable for a high school district, but as some of this technology has become more commonplace, have you found that the budgets grow along with that? Or what would you say regarding you say discretionary money, but it's the actual budgeting for technology procurement in districts?
So I would say that it's gotten tighter, that it's shrunk.
Okay.
People have, school districts have had to make decisions to, put their resources towards things that are educating kids more than those frills that you might need with a technology to help you in extracurricular activities. So I would say they shrunk, but I would also say that you're seeing bigger bonds being passed to be able to address the tightness of the budget. So now, if you do need some technology upgrades, and again, I keep talking about LED boards or whatever it may be, whatever the technology upgrade may be, a lot of times you're seeing those done through bond money. You're not seeing those done through budget, where there was a day when you did those kind of things through your budget.
Understood. So that the actual district-based budgeting is getting tighter, but you've had more of a proliferation of those bonds to make up the difference and go after some of those larger technology purchases. Interesting. So Philip, just to go off the script, so obviously this is introductory podcast for me, looking to start to connect people in the space and provide information out that's useful. I mentioned I wanted to have you on as the inaugural one because I think that there's so much that's unknown about the high school district and that market. And as an individual, I think you're a great dude. So anything else we kind of discussed, or things that you kind of thought would be maybe useful under the context that we're kind of providing educational material that someone can say, hey, I've not dealt with high school districts before. Here's a guy who's been there for 30 years. And now, which is really interesting, I'm glad you mentioned it, you're on the other side. So now, instead of just being the person that everyone's coming to buy their wares, you're now on the other side representing vendors and looking at how to come in, maybe with a different internal understanding of the processes and some relationships that should come along with there. But is there anything, as you've been on the vendor side, that you have found surprising, things that you were like, oh wow, this is not what I expected? Or is it kind of been pretty much what you thought when you got involved on the vendor side?
So first of all, thanks for having me on as the first guest. It's always fun to do things like this, and to be able to, one of the things as you age and as you gain experience, it's always fun to be able to share the experiences that you have, and to be able to share some of those things that maybe the knowledge you've gained and some of the mistakes you've made along the way as well.
Sure.
But one of the things that I think would be a really good show, and one that I would really tune into really hard, because I've learned that it's really in the fields that I'm in, where I'm the people that I'm representing, it's really a dog eat dog world,
right?
And I didn't see that as vivid when I was an athletic director as I do now. I see that a little more vivid now than I did then. And so it's a pretty dog eat dog world out there. And I think a great show would be to find somebody that's had a massive amount of success at selling and building relationships and navigating different school districts, the high school space, to figure out who those players are, and then how did they make a connection to them? How did they how did they get them to give them an audience? How did they get them to give them an opportunity to come in and to at least share what it is they had that they were peddling? So I think that would be a really good show, to find somebody that's done that, that's had a lot of success at it, and the methods they used to be able to make those connections. Again, I'm still navigating that.
Sure.
Your network is your network is your net worth. So I do have that. Those people that I do have connections with, but there's also places that I don't have connections, and so I'm trying to figure out, how do you navigate that? How do you get in there and have an opportunity to be able to share what it is that you have with the people that are the decision makers. And so I think that would be a great show.
That's great input. And what would you think? I mean, potentially even having a couple, so it's almost a forum, not a ton, but you get some people that may come about it from different types of products, right? And it could be from turf or equipment versus technology, but really understanding how they've built up their clientele navigating that space. Because it sounds like, even coming from decades in the space where you've had the inside look out, coming on the outside now and representing and helping vendors, there's still so much about how certain vendors and individuals have had success kind of building up relationships in the space that wasn't, visible to you as an athletic director, and now you're starting to see it from the outside looking in, which is fascinating. Would you say are there many consultants that get involved in high school projects, or do you typically think do most districts make their decision-making process on their own?
I would say that the majority make them on their own. Yes.
Got it. And when a consultant gets involved in a project, is that normally because the size of the district? Is it because of a relationship? Is it, what circumstances have you seen in there? Because I see a vast majority of high school projects I haven't seen consultants on, right? But I have seen consultants get involved, particularly on some of the larger, stadium builds where there's a lot of money at stake. But what would you say when those consultants get involved? Is that normally the same as a vendor, that they went to sell the district, that their expertise would be a value in this procurement process?
Yes, and in some instances it may have to do with the level of I don't want to say the level of insecurity, but the level of security the person that's responsible for the project may or may not have. If they don't feel really secure in some components of the process, then they would hire somebody to consult to help them through that.
Understood.
A lot of times, and you find this to be true, and I also think this is a little bit fascinating. A lot of times, those people that are decision makers in those areas, if you'll think about it, they were teachers or principals or things like that, and so they don't have an expertise in that. Their expertise is the education part of it. So they understand education. Maybe they didn't do so good in their job, and they got promoted into something, like operations, and they worked their way up through the operations to be a lead in that area. But really, honestly, their background isn't that. Their background is education. Sure. A lot of times superintendents are, they're responsible for the finances of a school district, but they started out as a teacher and a coach.
Right.
So they've got to hire somebody to be their CFO that's an expert in that area and trust that they're going to take care of that and manage that and educate them on it. So it's the same thing when it comes to technology. a lot of the people that are making the decisions about technology really don't know that much about technology because they're educators. They
Understood.
just have been put in charge of that area.
Yeah. But you said it interestingly. You said it had to do with confidence. So it may be that somebody has a lot of confidence and still doesn't have the expertise, but they're not going to go out for third-party consultants because they're confident in either themselves or their staff to do it. Whereas those people who have less confidence are probably more likely to bring someone in to help ensure that they're making good use of the money that they have there. But I'd imagine that some younger districts or younger ADs or smaller districts that have less people resources, I can imagine them be in a position to where there may be less confidence. But I think there's some of that is in the experience of that athletic director or their staff. So you could be a single high school district and be a 30-year plus athletic director, and you have the confidence, because you've seen through X number of technology procurements over, multiple districts. And so you kind of have confidence that you can carry that through.
Yeah, very much so. Very much so.
Excellent.
I was going to add a little bit to that last question.
Yeah.
So here's what I'm going to add. A lot of times, the whole importance of building that relationship is because you become the consultant for them as the expert with your product, if that makes sense.
It does. The consultant is the vendor.
The consultant is the vendor, and you're consulting them, and basically you're consulting them to show them why your product is better than the competitor's product. And, so ultimately you kind of become the consultant. And if you can build a relationship to a deep level relationship, then when they have questions about those things, they don't call a consultant, they call you as a vendor to find out your opinion about that particular product or that particular area of expertise, that particular technology.
That's a great point. No, it makes complete sense. So the importance of partnerships, and we go into confidence again. So your confidence as an athletic director in a particular individual, a particular vendor, based on your relationship with them and what they've shown you in the past, means that can open up a revenue stream for them or a sales stream, because now as you have another project that comes on the horizon, instead of you looking for a third-party consultant, or instead of you doing it just internally, you have enough confidence in this partner to advise you and help bring you to water if you're thirsty, right?
So I'm going to give you an example that's outside of the technology world. Let's take clothing. So I develop a relationship with a sporting goods sales rep, and I decide that let's say that I'm an Under Armour school district. I have a contract with Under Armour, and I want to determine whether I want to continue with Under Armour, or I want to go with Adidas, or I want to go with Nike, or if I want to go with something else. I'm going to call that sales rep that works for the clothing company, and I'm going to say, hey, listen, I'm Under Armour right now, but I'm thinking about changing. I mean, would you change? Would you not change? What does Nike offer? What does Adidas offer? Is Under Armour the best deal? So now they become my consultant on what how I'm gonna navigate that. If I'm gonna make change, if I'm gonna consider change, if I'm gonna look at Nike, if I'm gonna look at Adidas, if I'm not gonna look at either one of those, if I find out that I have the best deal with Under Armour, again, they have now become my consultant, if that makes sense. And I know that's not in the technology world, but that's an example of what it looks like.
Well, it's not in the technology world, but really all procurement, I think in some senses, you have a limited amount of money, you have priorities, and you're going to spend that money where you're meeting your needs and where you have confidence. And, growing on that, would you say that it was rare for you to purchase from a company or an individual that you had a very short and insignificant, relationship with? Would you say that typically that would have been the exception, not the rule?
Depends on whether it's a product that I've been using or a product that's new to me. So if it's a product that I've been using, I'm probably going to purchase that from somebody, if it's a product in the category, that I've been using, that person, then I'm probably going to purchase from them. If it's something totally new or totally different or a totally different, technology that doesn't fall under that person's, realm of background knowledge, then I'm probably going to buy it from somebody that's new or different.
Okay. So if it's something that you're not as familiar with, you haven't used before, you're looking for the latest and the greatest. Whereas if this is something you have familiarity and you bought before, the longstanding relationships went out.
Yes.
Awesome. Good. Any other thoughts from your side, Philip?
No. I think we've had some good conversation.
I appreciate you so much for coming on and doing this. I find this fascinating myself because I've spent, 25 years selling inside of sports venues, including high schools. And it's always been very difficult to find consistency at the high school district level, right? And so hearing it from somebody who's been there, done that, now sitting on the other side, and with your pedigree, wanted to bring up real quickly, the Texas High School Athletic Director Association, right? How is the Texas Athletic Director High School Association involved in managing vendor relationships or facilitating that, through certain shows? How actively involved is that organization in the helping facilitate relationships versus what is kind of ad hoc and just everybody does their own thing?
So another great question. And having been the president of the association, I will tell you that the association runs through the dollars they make through their state conference and their vending shows. So they have 3 different vending shows every year. They have a fall forum, they have a spring showcase, and then they have the state conference in June every year. Generally speaking, it's the first week in June. And the state conference will have, somewhere in the neighborhood of 1,000 attendees that are high school, either athletic directors, administrators, assistant athletic directors, etc. And so they have a massive trade show there. And so that is a way for them to facilitate the relationships with the vendors. Again, they do that because that's the dollars they use to run the association. But they have a spring showcase and a fall forum where they do the same thing. They have a smaller number of vendors. Some of their more elite sponsors have an opportunity to attend those shows. Those shows, anywhere from 200 to 400 people that show up to those. So they're considerably smaller. They're they're a day and a half event. It'll start on a Tuesday night and it'll go all day Wednesday, and then it's over. But they do their best to facilitate those relationships. They also motive in that.
Sure.
But again, it's the motive is pure because it helps run the association and it helps the vendors develop relationships with the people that are there in the room.
No, it makes total sense. And so I'm assuming that they encourage the athletic directors, coaches, others to get to know those vendors that are there and to try to show, if you will, preference maybe to those supporting the organization, because they're the ones funding it through the conference fees. And so I'd imagine as a vendor, it's if you don't have strong, whether you do or you don't, if you don't have strong relationships yet there, that's probably a good place to start. Kind of put your money where your mouth is, and you go and become a sponsor for a conference, and now you at least get access to the people, and those athletic directors, coaches are encouraged to visit and to be a good patron, if it makes sense.
100%. That's exactly how it works. There's also 8 regions in the state, and at each one of those regions, once a month. And when I say once a month, they have about 8 of those a year, but they have regional meetings They don't literally have them every month. Like December, they don't have one because it's Christmas.
Right.
Usually they don't have one in June because in June we have the state conference. They won't have one, in I want to say it's in March where they have the spring showcase. You won't have a regional meeting that month. So there's about 8 of those regional meetings a year. And if you're a state sponsor, then you get to present at those regional meetings. So that's another way for you to be up front and center with a smaller group in a specific region. So
excellent. That makes sense. So they be a sponsor, a state sponsor, and you have those opportunities to speak and present at these regional meetings. You said those happen like
correct.
6-8 times a year or something, but they're
somewhere around 8 times a year. And and like I said, there's a few months where we don't have them, but about eight different months out of the course of the year, they'll have a regional meeting.
Awesome. Philip, my friend, thank you so much for joining us for this inaugural podcast. It's been a wealth of information, ton of knowledge coming from you. I appreciate you. And I look forward to interfacing with you on the other side now that we're both playing on the same side of the field. So thank you. Thank you
very much. It's been it's cool that I got a chance to connect with you through a mutual friend, and it's been good to get to know you. And you mentioned earlier, good dude. You yourself are a good dude.
Well, thank you, man. So no, I'm glad Ross opened that door. So great stuff.
Me too.
So thank you. Thanks for listening to the AV Tech Playbook. If you want to think differently about your AV tech strategy, make sure to subscribe so you never miss what's next. And if you know someone who could use a fresh perspective on AV and IT, send this their way. We'll see you next time.